Most UFO sightings end the same way: a light in the sky, a blurry photo, something that disappears before anyone can get close enough to understand what they just saw. But this one didn't disappear. It fell, straight out of the night sky and into the ocean, in front of dozens of witnesses. People who didn't know each other, people who had nothing to gain, people who all described the same thing: lights descending, struggling, like something losing control, and then a splash, loud enough to echo across the water, bright enough to light up the surface of the Atlantic. So naturally, authorities assumed the worst. A plane had gone down. Rescue teams were called. Ships were launched. They expected wreckage. They expected bodies. But when they got there was nothing. No debris, no fuel, no aircraft, just lights moving underwater. This is Mystery Trails, and I'm Scott. Tonight, we're heading to the cold Atlantic coast of Canada, to a quiet fishing village that became the center of one of the most credible and officially unsolved UFO cases in history. Because what happened in Shag Harbour wasn't just seen, it was tracked. October 4th, 1967. Up in Shag Harbour, Nova Scotia. Now, this is a small fishing village, the kind of place where nothing really out of the ordinary happens. Nights are quiet, predictable, just dark ocean and a few lights from houses along the shore. But just after 11 that night, something changed. People started noticing lights out over the water. At first, it didn't seem like much, but then they realized it wasn't just one light. There were several of them, amber-colored, lined up almost in a straight row. And right away, something didn't feel right. They weren't blinking like airplane lights. They weren't streaking across the sky like a meteor. They were steady, almost controlled, and slowly, they were coming down. That's when people started stepping outside. Fishermen paused what they were doing and looked out from the docks. Drivers along the coastal road actually pulled over just to watch, because now it was obvious. Everyone was seeing the same thing. The lights dipped lower, then rose just a little, then dipped again, like whatever it was struggling to stay in the air. And then it got too low. Then came the sound. Not loud at first, but fast, like something cutting through the air at speed, a rushing noise, almost like wind being torn apart. And then a heavy splash, the kind of splash that just doesn't belong in a quiet harbor at night. And everyone heard it, because whatever those lights were, they had just hit the water. But here's the part that really stuck with people. They didn't just disappear. For a moment, you could still see them, under the surface, glowing, faint, but still there, like something sinking, slowly, down into the black Atlantic. And that's when it hit everyone at the same time. This wasn't just something flying overhead anymore. Whatever they had been watching was now in the water. Within minutes, the phones started ringing. Not just one call, multiple, different people, same message. A plane just crashed. There are people in the water. Something went down out there. Send help. This was treated like a real emergency. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police didn't hesitate. They headed straight for the shoreline, expecting the worst. Wreckage scattered across the water. Survivors calling for help. Maybe even fire on the surface. But when they got there, nothing looked the way it should. The harbor was calm. Too calm. No waves breaking from an impact. No debris drifting in the tide. No pieces of metal. No luggage. Not even the smell of fuel in the air. Just dark water stretching out into the night. And then they saw it. Out there, about half a mile from shore, a single light. Pale yellow, floating, just sitting on the surface like it didn't belong there. It wasn't flashing, it wasn't signaling, it wasn't moving with any urgency. It was just there, gently bobbing with the water, completely silent. The officers stood there watching it, trying to make sense of what they were looking at. Minutes passed, then more. Some estimates say they watched it for close to an hour, waiting for something to happen, for it to drift closer, break apart, give them some kind of clue. But it never did. And then, without warning, the light sank. No explosion, no splash, no steam, no sound at all. It didn't dive. It didn't break apart. It just slowly slipped beneath the surface and disappeared into the dark, like whatever it was had decided to leave. At that point, this wasn't just a strange sighting anymore. This had turned into a full investigation. Because as far as everyone on shore was concerned, something had just gone down in that water. And if it was a plane, there could be people out there who needed help. So the response escalated fast. The Coast Guard launched search vessels into the harbor. Rescue teams began sweeping the area with lights, and local fishermen, people who knew those waters better than anyone, took their own boats out to help. They weren't treating this like a mystery. They were treating it like a rescue. At the same time, the Air Force started doing something just as important. They began checking records, flight logs, radar data, anything that could tell them what had been in the sky that night. They went through everything. Civilian flights in the area, military aircraft, even foreign traffic that could have been passing through. Every possibility. And one by one, they checked them off. Accounted for, accounted for, accounted for. Nothing missing. No distress signals. No emergency transmissions. No reports of anything going down. Nothing. Which left them with a problem they couldn't explain, because something had clearly entered that water. Dozens of people saw it. Police saw it. Search crews responded to it. But according to every official record, nothing was supposed to be there. And that meant one thing. Whatever hit the water that night wasn't supposed to exist. The next morning, the investigation went deeper. The Royal Canadian Navy moved in and sent divers down to the exact area where the object had gone under. At this point, everyone still had the same expectation. They were going to find a crash site, twisted metal, pieces of an aircraft, maybe engines, maybe debris scattered across the ocean floor. Something that would finally explain what people had seen the night before. But when those divers reached the bottom, there was nothing. No wreckage, no debris field, no signs of impact, no gouge in the seabed, no broken parts, nothing that even suggested something had crashed there. Just cold, empty ocean floor. And that's where things started to take a turn. Because while the divers weren't seeing anything, the sonar operators were. They started getting returns, large ones, solid, metallic. And they weren't stationary. They were moving, not drifting with the current, not sinking, moving. Slow, steady, controlled movement along the ocean floor, heading away from the harbor. One diver would later describe it in a way that stuck with people for years. He said, "Whatever it wasn't broken. It was leaving." According to the reports, whatever was out there didn't stay in Shag Harbour. It moved, underwater, south, away from the harbor, toward deeper water near Shelburne. And that location matters, because that area wasn't just open ocean. It was known for something very specific, a military acoustic monitoring zone, the kind of place used to detect submarines, track movement, listen to what's happening beneath the surface, which makes what happened next even harder to ignore. Naval ships repositioned. They followed it, held their position over this new location. Divers were sent down again. More equipment was brought in. Sonar sweeps intensified. This wasn't a search anymore. This felt like tracking. And people along the coast started noticing things. Unusual activity offshore. Ships staying out longer than expected. And at night, some claimed they saw it again. Lights, underwater, moving. The same amber glow, just beneath the surface. The same color people had watched fall from the sky the night before. Whatever it was, it hadn't disappeared. It had relocated. And then, just as suddenly as all of this began, it stopped. The ships pulled out. Operations ended. No press conference. No detailed explanation. Just a quiet conclusion. The investigation was over. No answers given. Officially, that was the end of it. The case was closed. No aircraft crash. No wreckage recovered. No confirmed explanation. Just another incident, filed away. But behind the scenes, it wasn't treated that simply. Internally, investigators gave it a different classification. Not a UFO, a USO, an unidentified submerged object, which is a very specific way of saying this wasn't just something seen in the sky. This was something that entered the water and continued moving. The report itself made a few things very clear. It wasn't a meteor. It wasn't aircraft debris. It wasn't flares, lanterns, or anything misidentified. And it wasn't considered a hoax. Multiple witnesses, police involvement, military response, tracked movement, all of it documented. And still, no explanation. Even decades later, no one has ever been able to say with certainty what that object was, only that it was there, it was seen, it was tracked, and then it was gone. So what was it? Was this some kind of secret military craft? Something experimental? Way ahead of anything the public knew about in 1967? Was it a foreign surveillance vehicle operating quietly off the coast? Or are we looking at something else entirely? Something that doesn't fit into anything we've built or understand? Because when you really step back and look at what happened, this doesn't behave like a crash. It came down out of the sky, but it didn't break apart. It entered the water, but it didn't sink like wreckage. There was no debris, no damage, no sign of impact. And then it moved, tracked, underwater, with purpose, and eventually it left. That's not what accidents look like. That's what control looks like. Now we want to hear your perspective. After everything you've seen and heard, what do you think happened in Shag Harbour? Was this a classified piece of technology? Something operating beyond public knowledge? Was it a foreign craft, moving undetected along the coast? Or are we dealing with something that doesn't fit within any known explanation? Take a moment and share your thoughts below, because cases like this aren't solved by silence. They're explored through perspective. If you're drawn to stories like this, documented events, credible witnesses, and mysteries that remain unresolved, subscribe to Mystery Trails. Because not everything unexplained ends in the sky. Some cases continue beneath the surface. And here on Mystery Trails, we don't stop at the moment it disappears. We follow what happens next, even when the answers never come back up.